Flat snitches, 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 flat snitches.
Welcome to Flat Snitches, episode 5. Today with my co-host Pete Brandt, we're going to be talking about the Crackpacker, and we've also got Frosty in the house, but also Chad Johnston. Chad was one of the first people to ever see the Crackpacker in person. So I wanted to catch up, Pete did as well, and get some feedback from Chad about the Crackpacker and some of the history behind this amazing trick that's still inspirational today in modern day flatland. It's used, I would say, in 80% of the pro flatland riders runs still, and video parts. That's crazy, and people are still coming up with new things, as well as Pete himself. So firstly, let's talk about what is a Crackpacker, Pete.
It's not a wheelchair. That's the best way to describe it. You know, the one thing that, you know, I want to bring up is that, you know, it's kind of like comparing a puppet. You know, a gliding puppet is what some people would consider a death truck, but obviously a death truck is a different trick. So that's the thing that I wanted to bring up mostly, is that a Crackpacker is definitely not a scuffing trick.
Yeah, same position, different technique.
With high fork, with high pegs. Sorry, not high forks. You had those crazy pegs, Pete. Do you remember that?
High fork pegs. Oh yeah, man. I remember actually having to modify forks and stuff like that, drill them out and put peg bosses and stuff like that. And it's interesting because, you know, at the time, I didn't think that it was like, you know, a problem. Like, you know, it's like what we adapted to, and eventually it just evolved to be something that was like strictly to the straight balance point.
So when did the Crackpacker come about? When did you create the Crackpacker?
I want to say like about 87 and a half. By 88, I actually was able to do it and glide it, and, you know, variations no-handed. You know, one of the things with the Crackpacker is that when I first started to do it, you know, of course, you know, as I was learning it, just to get it, you know, a decent distance, I started to, you know, think of variations like, oh, what if I do it no-handed? What if I do it behind the seat, like a cliffhanger and stuff like that, and so on. So it was like one of those things where I was, you know, just always like thinking of the different possibilities as I was, you know, creating the trick.
And combinations, you were linking it up with whiplashes and stuff.
Oh yeah. That was like, you know, oh dude, next thing you could do is whiplash to Hat-Packer and just, or whiplash back into it, and just, oh man, you know, it's just took it on a world of its own.
Insane.
Hell yeah.
Do you know whereabouts you were when you created the Crackpacker, Pete?
Yeah, it was actually in Millbrae, and it was across the street from where I was living in my grandmother's house. And I remember, you know, it was much like the Hang Five. It was a place that I would go to where I would be like, okay, when I could actually get to the end of the parking lot, you know, then I knew that I had it. And it was always like another thing too, was like, okay, if I could actually get to one parking stall, I'm I'm progressing. So I definitely was like, okay, once I got to like 2 or 3 parking stalls, that's when I was like, okay, I'm getting control of this. And then it was like, before I knew it, I was like at the end of that parking garage.
When was the first time anybody saw you do a Crackpacker?
Yeah, that's the interesting thing is I want to say that as far as anybody documenting it, as far as like video or anything, Chad was like the first one. I mean, I rode with Eric a lot back in the day, of course, so he saw it, and he of course started to, you know, learn it. We like learned tricks off each other, you know, back then. But Chad was like really one of the first people that ever saw it, you know, and especially brought it to light as far as video goes. It was in an Intrikat video, Reali-TV. And yeah, I'm so stoked that, you know, he actually caught that, because I mean, at the time we were just like, you know, video wasn't really a thing. It was like we would record things, and you know, there wasn't very many people, like not like today's media where there's like tons of videos out that are out there where, you know, somebody could see it. So it was like really one of those things where it's like it made a staple point, you know, to where it's like that trick was, you know, really featured in that particular video.
Yeah,
So
cameras were so expensive back then. Not everybody had one.
Yeah,
it was like
and
maybe
you had to
one
have, like,
person in your crew.
Yeah, you had to have big muscles, man, to be able to hold that fucking huge camera.
Yeah,
You know?
that big old brick, dude, like a cinder brick.
So Chad,
yeah.
so Chad, what do you recall about that filming session with Pete? I mean, Pete was doing so much original stuff at that time. Did you even like think about that Crackpacker, or were you just like thinking about other stuff?
Yeah, no, I was blown away by that, by the death truck, the whiplash combos, the dump trucks, the spinning stuff. Like pretty much everything Pete and Eric were doing blew me away, and that's why, you know, I wanted to get up there and film so bad. But yeah, there was a lot of memorable things that went on up there besides riding. You know, there's just a lot of crazy stuff going on up there.
Yeah, what's your like fondest memory of that time period filming that section?
Oh man, well, just hanging out, driving around together, talking about freestyle and all the possibilities. That was memorable. But yeah, I guess the tricks stand out the most because, you know, that's what we were there for. And yeah, once the video came out, that the tricks really stood out for sure the most.
Did you kind of realize at the time when you were filming it, like how groundbreaking it was?
I kind of did. I mean, maybe not to the extent, but I kind of did. Like, it was obvious those guys were on a mission and they were progressing like crazy. So yeah, I knew something was going to come out of it because yeah, their riding was so different than everybody else's at that time.
That kind of reminds me, like when I think about, for me personally, I was on the East Coast in upstate New York, and Dave Mira and the plywood hoods were all the rage. And I never even thought about what was going on the West Coast. And it took
we were seeing all the Dorking stuff.
Many years for me to realize that there was this whole other movement on the West Coast that was like equally innovative. And so learning some of this history from hanging out with Pete for as long as I have, and you, it's been kind of an educational piece. You know, it's like we always look at the plywood hoods and the Dorkin videos, and we're like, yeah. Love the fact that Kevin and Mark knew that there was this movement on the West Coast and included had sections for people from the West Coast in their videos, knowing that they would have had to, and realized that there was a lot of innovation going around in the Bay Area too. So it's
it was cool, man. It was a good scene.
It's good to learn that piece of that history and connect the dots.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, I remember ordering the video from Chad. Do you remember that, Chad? I used to send the money through the post. It's crazy to think of that now.
I do. I remember that. Yeah, I couldn't believe that I was sending these videos to Europe and some to Asia and all over the U.S. Yeah, New Zealand. Yeah, it was a trip.
Just crazy, man.
Yeah.
So awesome.
It was crazy. It was unexpected, you know, like I really didn't expect that video would sell or go out as big as it did, you know. It was kind of just a project a learning experience. It wasn't really like any blueprints or any like list of things to do. It was just we just started filming stuff, and after Greg Higgins and I were like looking at all the footage and stuff, he mentioned, yeah, you should put this together for a video. So we ended up doing that, and I can't believe that people bought it.
Yeah, it's so crazy to think about, like from my perspective, because there's like tons of people like pointing cameras, and in a certain sense, like back then, where I'm going to make a video, but there's so much work and effort that needed to take place to be able to accomplish that, obviously. And for somebody to actually do it and come through, it was very rare. You know, like you would say, like, oh, you know, you see the beginning stages and stuff like that where somebody, you know, started to do video, like, oh yeah, it sounds cool, and they'd have one track of music or something like that. But to actually follow through, and then the difference with just the audio and the video and stuff like that, editing, especially with like VHS to VHS.
You had deck to deck.
Decks, you know, to make this video, you know, it was just, you know, completely like, dude, it's unheard of, you know, until Intrikat did it, you know. It was like really like, I think it was like you and Els were the only ones that were really like putting that effort forward, you know, to make this happen.
Yeah, out here on the West Coast, yeah, for sure. Yep. Yeah, of course the Dorkin and York series out on the East Coast. But yeah, it was awesome time, man.
But you really
can't forget the Dorkin and York videos.
Yeah, you really captured like the feel of the West Coast as well, Chad, with like the Too Short track, you know, Life Is, and you had like that dope intro with the streets of San Francisco. I mean, I love that. That was so sick.
Yeah, that was fun. Yeah, San Francisco's a rad place, man.
Yeah, a lot of history, man. So, Pete, when did you first drop the Crackpacker in a contest?
God, man, there was like so many like local contests back then. It was like ABA, AFA local like contest. It wasn't just the Masters and stuff like that. So I want to say it was like Linwood Coliseum, possibly. I don't know if I did it in my run, but I was like, that was like right when I learned hitchhikers. I was already trying to, you know, develop the Crackpacker. It was like something that was like kind of like, oh, you could use your other foot on the other peg to balance it, you know, get that balance point. So.
And Chad, when did you first meet Pete? Obviously, you knew of him like when a lot of people hadn't heard of Pete, and then when your video come out, everyone knew who Pete was. So when did you first meet Pete?
I don't remember exactly the year. It was late 80s, or, you know, 87, 88-ish, I think, or maybe 89, something like that. And I think it was probably at an underground contest or like a local LA contest. I'm not exactly sure. Pete might remember better than I do.
Dude, I remember you were wearing leathers, man.
I was wearing leathers.
And I remember I was like, dude, I want leather so bad. I was like, and on top of it, like, Chad was killing it, dude. He was absolutely killing it, to where I was like, dude, these guys in LA are way fucking better. They're so fucking dope and dialed and shit, you know. Like, I was like, it was interesting because I'll never forget it, because I was like, dude, I always rode in the same spot, you know, Fifth Street Underground parking garage, where you could see, you know, some TV video footage and stuff like that. But what was crazy is like, I just rode that one spot. So when I went to go ride at this contest, I was like, oh, the ground is like so different, you know? And I didn't realize, like, at the time, like, dude, it pays to ride at different spots, you know, to ride and get used to different surfaces. And that's how you could become dialed, you know. But I remember seeing Chad, just getting back to the subject, you know, he was dialed. I was like, I don't know if this guy's been riding here or whatever, but it opened up my mind, you know, and that at that time, you know, to where I'm like, dude, you know, it's just like, it's one thing to be dialed at your spot, but it's another thing to be dialed anywhere. And, you know, Chad came across as that, you know, he's super dialed.
Hell yeah. Yeah. We clicked right away too. I remember, like, as soon as I met you and Eric, it was like we were friends for a long time, dude. You guys invited me up there, and I went up there soon after. I drove up by myself, and yeah, we just had a great time, man. It felt like we had been friends for a long time. You guys were showing me around the city and around your spots and stuff. And
yeah, it was awesome. It was definitely one of those things where it's like, not, you know, like, it's like we almost knew each other already.
Yeah. Yep. That's what it felt like.
The universal language of Flatland. I love it.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
No barriers, is there, at all? Like, it's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And then you find like people that you can relate with, that, you know, I was tripping out because they had like the same idea about riding as I did. It was like most of the people are all doing the same tricks, but there's so many other tricks out there that you could do. So why are you doing what everyone else is doing? Like, do your own stuff, work on your own stuff, you know? And we just really vibed off each other from that.
That's so good.
Yeah.
We're going to have to do a future episode just with you, Chad. You know that, right?
Hell yeah.
Yeah. I'm down for sure.
Chad, when was the first time you saw the Crackpacker being copied? And then Pete, same question.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly, but it was shortly after that. I don't know if it was probably at another underground contest. Like back in the 80s, the late 80s, they used to have these underground contests. They're just like local contests. It felt like during the summertime, there was one almost every other weekend or every weekend sometimes.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So like after Pete and Eric were killing it, like you could see people starting to do their links and their tricks like months or weeks after that. So like probably by the next contest or two, like half the people there were trying their stuff. Yeah. Yeah.
That's
like
crazy.
Everybody was trying death trucks, whiplash combos, crackpackers. Yeah, a lot of that stuff, like the combos. I remember like Eric had some lard yard combo that a lot of people were biting. Yeah, they influenced like everybody out here for sure. Probably like
all over
probably
the world,
like 89-ish.
Yeah. So what about you, Pete? 80? Do you remember?
Yeah, I remember like Day and a couple other writers and stuff like that. And you know, what's interesting about this, you know, subject is that a lot of, you know, writers would say, dude, like trying to get a rise out of me, like to where I would be like offended. But I was actually like, man, you know, stoked. I was stoked that I was able to contribute something that somebody felt, you know. So it was like really something that still to this day, you know, sticks to me to where I'm like, man, I did something with it. You know, I didn't do it like self-centered, like, look at me, you know, I'm badass. You know, it was like, dude, I'm bringing something that people can use, you know. So
yeah.
It's that's pretty much it. You know, as far as like when I first specifically saw somebody try to do it was Golden Gate Park, and it was an old school rider. I forgot his name, unfortunately. But yeah, he was like basically trying to get the concept. I'm like, dude, you should probably learn like hitchhikers first. You know, it's just the balance of you know putting both feet on the pegs to equal distribution of balance. So yeah, that's about my first recollection as far as like when I first saw somebody else try it.
Yeah. So
Probably
after
like,
oh, go on, Chad.
Like was that like around 89, 90, something like that?
Yeah, about 89, I want to say.
Yeah, that's what I remember.
Yeah. So after the no-handed Crackpacker, Pete, what variations came after that for you? Like in 89, 90?
Around 89, 90, yeah. The first thing, of course, was the no-handed, then behind the seat, because I was doing cliffhangers at the time. So I was like, oh, yeah, I call this crackhanger. And then, of course, there was like different things. Like I think one of the first variations as far as whiplash, like it basically crackpacker to whiplash to half packer, and then, whole junkyard series to back wheel tricks. But and then before that, I believe there was one that I did where I would grab the front brake and I would jump to a crawl cruiser backwards. So that was like basically the introduction of, the different variations that I came up with at the time.
So you did the Crackpacker whip to half packer with the high pegs?
Yeah. Not only that, you know what I was doing, and this is crazy to think about now that you mention it, is I was doing a Crackpacker double whiplash in front of the bars to half packer. That was like, that was like kind of like, well, that was like a contest type of trick, for me. It wasn't like something I had, super dialed, but I was like, dude, that's like one of my banger tricks, in my opinion.
Hell yeah.
Whilst we're talking about the Crackpacker though, the crackhanger, when was that you first did that?
That was like came directly after, and that was the thing, is it was one of those tricks where I didn't have a lot of stuff to do out of it, and to get into it and out of it was like an awkward type of position. So I stuck with mostly like crackpacker variations, being able to get to, but I could do it. It was like one of those things where I was like, oh, this would be cool to do. And then later on, I don't know if a lot of people have seen this, but the crackhanger to jump to hitchhiker. Actually, I did and persevere, and that was like one of those tricks where I was like, I remember like as a kid making up the crackhanger. I was like, oh man, wouldn't that would just be like a dream trick? That was like one of those like your trip. I was like almost in imagination as far as like doing a double bike flip. You're just like, dude, what if you were able to do that?
So I gotta ask. So is this what's commonly known now as a coat hanger?
Yeah,
actually.
Yeah, I guess in the UK we called it a coat hanger. We didn't know. I didn't know, or anybody else knew that Pete called it a crack hanger. So we just I don't know why we called it a coat hanger. We just kind of did, and then nobody ever told us any different until now. Like, well, obviously, where I've hung out with Pete in the past, he's told me, it's called a crack hanger, and I'm like, that makes total sense.
It does. It does actually make a lot more sense than being called a coat hanger, but I think that's what it's called now. Isn't it?
Yeah, it's like a gliding wheelchair. You called it a wheelchair.
I did.
And I was like, dude, this is exactly what we're talking about. But what's funny about that is like, just like the switch, they call it cross-footed hitchhiker. I call it always a switch hiker. It's a switch, it's a switch hiker, So it's like, switch-footed. But it's just people are going to come up with their own like different terms and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting across the world, like different names for the same trick. It's like for a while a spinning a half hiker was called a switch hiker, for us, which is weird.
No shit! I didn't even know that.
Yeah, so and also like stuff that people call stuff in the magazine, sometimes it sticks for years. I think there was like, just comes off the top of my head, but there was a picture in freestyling of Kevin Jones doing the hang five with his foot on the tire, no-handed. Do you remember that one where he's sliding his neck in a beer, go Frosty? And they said something like he was flying across the floor. So for years we called it the fly.
No shit. See, it's like different definitions, It's interesting because, I mean, there's a lot of people that like, make up tricks according to what they're seeing around. It's almost like, somebody like naming, in a different culture, naming their kids because of like Flying Eagle or something, because they see it like a fire hydrant. I could guarantee you that somebody would like saw a fire hydrant as they're making up this trick and came up with the name, but what somebody else could identify to, could catch on to where somebody else ends up calling it a coat hanger. And it's like, what the fuck does the coat hanger have to do with that trick?
So why did you call it the Crackpacker?
I called it the Crackpacker, and some people would be like, "Oh, because you're stuffing your seat in your crack or whatever," and that's some fucking, but nah, dude, that definitely wasn't it. The Crackpacker was actually because where we rode, like Eric Emerson, for anybody who knows the history, is where we rode was like a really gangster spot, and Chad knows
Hayward,
this, from filming there.
That parking lot, like, Hayward.
Exactly, like downtown Hayward, and it was like the spot where like a lot of dealers were down there like selling crack, and this is when the crack epidemic was happening in the 80s, and I was just like, okay, it's kind of like a half packer, but all these dudes are around me selling crack, so I was like, dude, I'll call it a Crackpacker, and I wasn't like condoning to where I'm like, oh yeah, it's cool to be a crack dealer, but I was just like, dude, this is what I'm seeing, this is what I'm living.
Product of your environment.
Yeah, exactly, man. Product of the environment, man.
Yeah, it's like a third base track, right?
Crazy, dude.
Damn. You're talking about, is that the outdoor place, Hayward, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like a long parking lot, had like a slight slant to it, like just a little bit, so you roll all the way down there.
Exactly.
I'm just gonna.
Chad remembers.
I'm just gonna add something.
I remember that after we were done filming, something happened at that Taco Bell. I don't remember exactly what it was, but like 10 minutes later, like this whole crew of Mustangs, old vintage Mustangs, showed up, dude. Like Eric's brother and a bunch of people. You remember that?
Dude, that's so real, man, because that's exactly the type of shit. I don't remember specifically that, but I remember that happening all the time. Where like I was living with Eric, for a good year or so, and it was like always like something like everybody would roll up and they'd be like, jump in the car, we're going to fuck somebody up or something like that. And I'd be like, dude, what did I sign up for? You know, and it's like, if you weren't down, you were going to get beat down. So it was like fucking even more sketchy.
I gotta add something only because of my personal experience, but I can see where someone would call it a crackpacker, because if you're sidestepping into it from like a crosshand steamroller and you misstep, sometimes those bars got kind of lodged.
It could get you in the
crack.
That's what I mean. It's like people like kind of thought like the meaning of it and the definition was a little bit different.
And God forbid you weren't going backwards and you step off. It's like you don't know where those bars are going.
Hell no.
I think for people that don't ride, that's what they would think. Like, oh, that's why it's called the crackpacker. He's like jamming his seat towards his ball like a cliffhanger. They're like, when someone sees you do a cliffhanger back in the day, they'd be like, dude, you must fucking you must not love your balls or whatever. You know, they say some crazy shit. And I'd be like, dude, it has nothing to do with your balls, you know, other than having the balls to do the trick. You know, it's not like you hit your balls every time on it. It's funny to think about that shit.
Yeah.
So, Chad, how long were you actually down in San Francisco filming that section for Reali-TV? It doesn't seem like it would be that long.
It was just a weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a quick trip. Just
so
maybe
you literally were like Hayward in the day, San Mateo at night.
Yep. It might have been I might have left Friday after school or something like that and came back Sunday. So yeah, it was a quick trip, man.
Yeah,
we did most of the filming in like. What's that?
You've always been like that. You come in and you just like, you know, you get it. You know, you get the footage, and that's why I'm like, this is serious. This guy's not like playing around. He's not like just, oh yeah, let me just hang out with the camera. He's like, he's about business on that sense, you know, and not like money-driven business.
Yeah, I remember one time filming with you up there where you were working on something. I don't think you had pulled it before, and we got most of the stuff we wanted, but you wanted more. But I ran out of time. I drove back here, and then like the next weekend, I drove up there for one day, and we got what we were trying to film the weekend prior.
Yeah, the switch hiker to turbine switch hiker to hat packer. That trick right there.
Yeah, that's right, dude. That's right.
Yeah, man.
That was so fun, dude. But yeah, I'd be on a mission, man. So like the drive didn't faze me. I was like, I'm down. We're gonna get the trick, and yeah, we did, man.
That's dedication right there, man. Like, you know, and that's the thing, that it was like a motivator for me as well, you know, like in the sense that I was like, dude, I can't not pull this trick. I have to do it. Today's the day. It's like to really push yourself. You know, a lot of times, you know, you're like, dude, you know, maybe I could get it today or whatever, but it was like, dude, it was a must. You know?
Yeah, no, and I learned a lot from you, like how you were so dedicated and put so much work into it too, man. Like I never seen anyone else at that time work that hard, you know? So it really motivated me and was like, dang, this dude's working that hard. I got to step my game up, you know?
Much respect, bro.
Hell yeah.
So moving on years later, Pete, what variations over the years have you seen from people on the Crackpacker and you were like, damn, fucking stoked on that. I wish I did that. Anything stand out?
Dude, almost everything, you know, like really, it's one of those things where I'm like, I love when, you know, I took a while where I didn't ride, you know, for a little bit. And I started to realize like, dude, people are still using this trick, you know, and I was stoked on it. Like anything that somebody does with it is always like, you know, I'm just stoked, you know, not in the sense where it's like, you know, I feel like somebody should credit me like, oh, well, dude, yeah, that's originally, you know, I don't want to be like how some people go, well, Kevin Jones did it first, you know, like I don't want to be that dude, you know, but I am stoked to where I see somebody do something where I didn't think of it, especially, you know, that's where it's like a lot of it, you know, comes into play to where I'm like, dude, I never even thought about that. Look at that. That dude actually pulled that shit off. There's so many. I think there's one thing that Simon Marston did with it. God, I don't know if it was a kickflip or something like that. He did something with it that was just like incredible, you know, to where I was like, dude, I never thought of it. I'm positive it's a kickflip, you know, but I guess we would have to research it to see the footage or whatever and whatnot.
Yeah, I don't remember that. Simon who?
Simon Marsden, the dude from Canada. He did a crackhanger actually and kickflipped it.
Oh,
Wow.
shoot. Yeah, I think I don't remember that. That's
Yeah.
rad. I remember
Yeah,
Eugene Collins
something
was
just yeah, it's incredible. I mean, I thought that I had with a variation as far as like crackhanger to jump to hitchhiker, but that right there was like, you know, just devastated me. I'm like, dude, I would never even fucking think about that. That's like so far ahead of its time. And the dude, you know, I guess he started writing again recently, but I'm like, dude, that guy, to pull that kind of trick, you know, is just incredible.
Hell yeah. Took it to the next level. I remember Eugene Collins was doing a kickflip with it too.
Yeah, but I think he did it. Did he do it backwards?
No, that was Dylan.
Dylan did it backwards.
Dylan did it backwards.
Oh, yeah. Dylan. Yeah, that's right. Dylan did it rolling backwards. Yeah.
Yeah, it's variations.
But I will say this, though. The most impressive one I've seen is actually Lee's Spider Glide.
Oh, right? Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, muscle white.
That's a variation for sure. Yeah, you have to get into crackpacker.
You got to get into the crackpacker position to even get to it. But watching that Spider Glide for the first time, you're like, what the fuck? Are you serious?
Yeah. Looks impossible.
Yeah, he's dialed at that too.
Hell
I remember Hiro Morizaki stands in when he did the pumping backwards crackpacker for the first time. Red Bull circular balance, and he wasn't even doing it in practice, and then he just bang. And I've never seen anybody do it like that. People spin backwards, but he was pumping backwards.
Yeah, yeah, I remember that.
That was one of the first pumping backwards tricks, if I recall. Like, legitimately. I mean, there was, of course, like, you know, backwards spinning lawnmower, green bean, whatever, satellite spin, what people want to call it. But other than that, as far as two-footed tricks, especially in that position, I mean, there was a couple riders doing like turbine, you know, hitchhiker and halfpacker, but as far as like spinning it, pumping backwards, that was the first time I saw it.
And then he controlled it enough to go forward, over into a
halfpacker. Yep.
Yeah. And now that's somewhat of a staple.
Yeah, that's like a trick. It's like not even a trick. It's almost like a transition.
Yeah. And that in itself was a pretty difficult trick, but just even to pump it backwards like that. And so now you see pumping backwards in double foot positions, hitchhikers and whatnot, but a lot of that is still not done by everybody, obviously, because it's a difficult position to pump in. But Hiro, man, he's got that stuff.
Ooh. Yeah,
it's electric. Awesome. It is electric when you see it in real life. You're like, God damn.
Yeah.
So what about nowadays, Chad? What are you up to? Like, filming? Are you still filming or anything?
No, I haven't been filming. I got kind of burned out on filming, and like behind the camera and kind of in front of the camera too. Like, I think, I don't know if it just, at first it used to be a lot of fun, but later on it just started to feel more like work.
Yeah.
Setting up the camera, and the spot I like to ride at, the underground, is always inconsistent with security. So like, I started getting frustrated trying to film and getting kicked out, and so I just haven't been into it much. I'm still riding. The spot's still kind of shady, but I'm just not motivated to film really at all right now.
Yeah, I thought I would ask what's your
underground spot that you.
What's that?
Yeah. So as far as the underground spot right now, like with all this COVID shit and the coronavirus, are they still like cracking down, like tripping out, like if you ride there?
Yeah, first there was a while where it was cool. No one was tripping. But yeah, after the lockdown and the safer at home stuff, years ago they installed cameras, but the people who were watching the cameras, like the monitors and stuff, they'd see us and they just recognize us. They knew we were down there, and they wouldn't trip. But yeah, after the COVID stuff, they had different people watching the cameras. They weren't like they let go a lot of their people that work there, but so some of the higher up dudes started watching the cameras, and they were like strict, like they weren't having it. So now if I go down there, I'm down there for like 10 minutes, and they're like, they come down, they're shooing us out right away, dude.
It almost makes me think like if you took a picture of the underground from that angle, and then post the picture in front of the lens. You know what I mean? Like, there's just some shit. I'd be like, either that or cut the cameras down. I don't know. Just how my mind works.
No, I've thought of both of those things, dude. But the cameras,
sure.
there's tall ceilings down there, and they're like, they drilled through the concrete to install these tiny cameras, and they got like a dome around them. So yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's something you can do. Yeah. There's some.
Chad, is that like a CIA office or what? I mean, that's weird.
No, they're strict, dude. I know, dude. I've been down there with them before, and like they fucking drive around these little carts and shit. They just like the fuck with these guys, and it doesn't make sense to me because it's like nobody parks there because it's like it's a perfect spot to ride because nobody's gonna park in there and go, oh, okay, great, we can't ride here anymore.
Yeah, it's a trip. I mean, because there's been times where I've gone down there like every day for like a year and never had any problems. But then like the next day, it's like, I don't know what changed. But then they'll just be real strict about it. But most of the people down there know and recognize me. So even if they get the orders to go, hey, there's a guy riding his bike down there, make sure he gets out of there. They'll come down and they'll tell me and they'll be like, just come back in 10 minutes. Some of the dudes are cool, but then, yes. So I don't know. I got a few different spots I like to ride. So they're not as good as the underground, but I'll sometimes warm up at a weak spot. And then once I'm feeling good, like ready to progress on some stuff, then I'll go to the underground and just make the most of my 30 minutes or 40 minutes down there,
That's the problem too, is like, even though you have alternate spots, you're like, and you get chased off of your main spot, that's psychological.
It's the compromise.
Totally.
It's the compromise.
Totally.
And if you're working on something new, that's not where you want to be. It's I want my spot. I've got to get this. And the only way I'm going to get it psychologically is I'm doing it right here at this spot.
Exactly.
Have that available to you.
It makes it more stressful, It's like, it just puts kind of pressure on it. It's not gonna help you progress. So
let's defund the security guards. That's what we need to do.
Exactly. Yeah, we tried to fill their pockets. We tried to pay them off. They weren't having it, man.
Yeah, that's what's so crazy is I would think a good old smoke out or something like that and fucking just like calm that storm down or try to get these fuckers like to realize like exactly like dude, how much are you making? I'll fucking like pay you fucking like $40 to leave me alone for the week. Yeah. That kind of thing should be, but you know what? It's a power trip thing. It's kind of just like what everybody's dealing with the cops. It doesn't have to do with necessarily, and I don't want to bring racism into it, but it has to do with like somebody like abusing their authority,
Totally. It totally does. Yeah. Yeah. And like some of the guys were really friendly with us and they knew that we were actually keeping an eye on the spot. Like there was shady people coming through there all the time, dude. And we would shoo them off.
I'm sure,
Chad, it's so funny you say that because the OG in Austin, just like that. There's
Same thing, yeah.
There's security there, and they will, for the most part, they leave you alone, and they've let it go for a long ass time. But then once in a while, you get a new one that's not familiar
with
it.
To kick some fucking
Somebody's
ass.
there to kick some ass.
Let's get these guys on their fucking kid bikes. And, that guy just yelled, fuck, he's out of here. Like, dude.
Totally.
Yeah.
So then there was times where, like, I knew which guards were cool and which weren't, and I knew what their hours were. So, like, that's when I really started riding early in the morning. I would just get there before anyone else was there.
Yeah.
By the time I was done, then they would be showing up.
That's
right. I'm a bit shady on it. Like there was one time where there's this security guard that was in 5th Street Underground. He kept coming down. He just like, man, he was like looking forward to kicking me out. And I was like, dude, I'm not going anywhere. And then I was like started to come up with the plan. I'm like, dude, I'm going to have like this girl that I was going out with at the time. I'm like, she was kind of hot. So I'm like, I'm going to say that, I'm going to have her go to the security guard's office and say that this guy sexually harassed me and get the fucking guy fired. I went so far as that.
Next level,
dude. Fucking dude, I never saw him again. I was like, dude, premonition or whatever.
That's insane.
Yeah, of course. Like, no. But I had to be effective. I couldn't just like pacify him because otherwise he'd be fucking my girlfriend next thing.
Oh, dude.
So.
Yeah. Oh, fuck. Yeah, lots of things.
I was like willing to go through those desperate measures, you know. In other words, like no matter what, by all means, like this guy's not going to win in the end. You know?
I'm sorry, honey. You gotta go to the team.
Oh my God.
There was this one dude who really had it out for us down there. He eventually lost his job, but yeah, he was on it. He'd be down there for 5 minutes, and he was after us. And he used to drive around this little Ford Ranger pickup truck. And one time I knew he was coming for me. I saw him, and so I cut out around the other direction. I made this big circle around the parking lot, and he saw me and he followed me. And then I cut back into the underground, and I don't know what he was looking at or what he was doing, but he ended up going up a curb and running head on into a tree with this Ford pickup truck. And I just heard it, dude. I didn't see it. I looked back and I hear smoke's coming out of the hood and shit.
Pete's ex-girlfriend was in that truck.
Hey, that's a whole nother segue right there, man. That shit could go on for days.
Oh
so yeah, that dude, like weeks after that, I stopped seeing him. Like I think he got fired for fucking up the truck.
That's rad. That's actually fucking, yeah, that's a blessing in disguise right there. Like, you got these motherfuckers riding their bikes and fucking crashing into a tree. That's what you got, man.
Hey, Pete, before we wrap this up, I was wondering, you talked about the wheelchairs when you scuff to get into a crackpacker. Did you learn to just do the crackpacker rolling from the get-go, or did you scuff into it to begin with?
No, actually at the time, you know, that was the thing is we were like heavily into rolling tricks. Like we used to like scuff into like half packer and shit like that. So that was part of the elimination. So I learned it right hand on the seat and then step over with the right leg and then take my hand off as I was my left hand stepping over. So it was like really like one of those things where it was like I was adamant about making it strictly rolling. It had nothing to do with wheelchair whatsoever, despite what Aaron might think.
Obviously, I never learned a wheelchair.
Yeah, you see that? And then you're giving credit to a wheelchair? What's wrong with you?
All right, let's wrap this up, guys, because that's been like pretty much 50 minutes, so it's pretty long. So I'll catch up with you guys soon. Thanks a lot for doing this. Pete, Aaron, Chad. That was Flat Snitches 5, Crackpacker. Thank you, everyone. That was rad.
Hey, thank you, man.
Awesome, guys.
Hell yeah.
It was a pleasure.